Dear Vice President, dear Dean of the School of Science, colleagues, friends, family members, and ladies and gentlemen. I feel truly privileged to be part of the scholarly community of Aalto University, and I wish to thank you for the opportunity to give this talk about my research in the Department of Industrial Engineering and Management. In this talk, I will introduce my ongoing research concerning the so-called service transformation, or a transition to service-centric strategies that is taking place in almost all industries that are doing something with technology. It's estimated that services currently constitute more than 70% of the GDP in Finland, and in some other countries the figure is even greater. The transformation toward service-centric value creation is an ongoing process. Similarly, the research that I, with my colleagues, are conducting in this field is far from complete. And I truly believe that my own most interesting research outcomes have not yet been published in this field. I will now give a snapshot of what I have been doing in this field with my colleagues. And please let me first introduce the topic in general. This is a very classical and simplistic framework used by many scholars to illustrate the topic. Service transformation refers to the transition to the right side of this picture. We study how and why this transition happens and on what grounds is it rationalized. In addition to the example of vehicles that is presented in the picture, there can be different types of services that are offered as the extension to products that can be like a tangible artifacts in business. Those services can include, for example, system services, combining extensions to goods, or customer-specific solutions to various needs, or maintenance of an installed base of equipment and life cycle support for that equipment. Also, supporting an operational performance of an industrial process is a service that many industrial firms in Finland are engaged with. Finally, commissioning to provide a complete implementation of an operation can be a service. For example, we have seen recently concepts like factory as a service, so that a company doesn't need to own their own facilities to produce something, but can use a factory on the basis of a service contract. The transition to service-centric operation includes the adoption of policies, practices, and schemes of reasoning that guide and reward service-oriented behaviors that provides customers more value than the tangible offerings alone. The photos here present some of the many scholars that have influenced and inspired my work. For example, the classical liberalist Fredrik Bastiat, on the top, described more than 150 years ago a market where services are exchanged for services. During his time, the services were considered in research more as public services, how public services should be organized. And I just realized that we are still thinking about the same issues in current society. While this phenomenon has been of interest to scholars for several hundred years, even before Bastiat, service transformation has been studied extensively only during the past 10 or 15 years in the engineering and management research. It is a phenomenon of interest to both scholars and managers in technology firms. More recently, services have been studied from the perspective of value creation in networks and service systems by scholars like Evert Gummesson and Steve Vargo. And the two pictures below show Bo Edvardsson and Christian Kowalkowski, with whom I'm currently working for a collaborative research paper with my colleague Jaakko Siltaloppi in our department. Instead of looking service strategies from a purely economic perspective, by focusing on the rationalities of strategic decision making, I want to take a more generic approach to understand how technology enables service operations and what outcomes and organizational challenges it brings on. This approach is very well in line with the mission of our department, which focuses on studying the creation and transformation of technology-based business. Really, something interesting is happening in many industries. It looks that the business models of technology firms are affected by digitization, and that the outcome seems to reveal service-centric competition. The cases here mentioned include Uber, the world's largest taxi company, which owns no vehicles. The other example is the Facebook, the world's most popular media owner, which creates no content. To continue, the Airbnb, the world's largest accommodation provider, owns no real estate. So the competition doesn't look to be based on resource ownership, but on serving the customers. Similarly, in Finland, the Kone Corporation, one of the world's leading elevator manufacturers, gains most of its revenue from service operations. And Vaisala, a leading industrial measurement instrument developer, provides an aviation weather system as a service. Just recently, I read from the news that Daimler, the vehicle manufacturer, announced that it becomes a software and service company, and the list could be continued. Richard Norman wrote in 2001 that there is no service revolution. There is a service revelation based on ICT revolution, hence the topic which tries to capture this phenomenon. An interesting viewpoint to study this topic is based on the social studies of technology. It takes in that technologies in practice produce changes that may lead to structural transformations. My colleagues and I study the ICT as a medium of human action. Based on this view, we see there's need to explain how technology-enabled service operations emerge as an institutional consequence of human and interorganizational interaction. If we describe the service transition from the product perspective, it might look like this. The technology enables the product to encompass, for example, new information management opportunities. This means that contextual information about the use of the product can be connected to other information resources that might serve the customer to meet other needs that are associated with the use of the product. For example, the tractor in this picture, which is taken from a study from Porter and Heppelmann, shows that the product can be connected to information related to the context where the tractor is used. The needs to be served, for example, might include, for example, remote diagnostics, data analytics, digital interaction with the user, or maintenance of the equipment. Then this might lead to connected multi-actor ecosystems where services are no longer added onto products, but products are embedded in the service process that is going to serve the customer. As shown in this figure, the ecosystems may include several subsystems that each have a specific purpose, such as the weather management system or irrigation system that provides some water to the soil in this example. A Nobel Prize was recently given in the economic sciences to developers of contract theory. We study smart contracts that can be programmed to allow automated transactions based on continuous demand sensing in these kinds of ecosystems. The services in the ecosystems might become so valuable that the sales and ownership of the product is not longer an important issue. Our current research is focused on exploring these complex service systems that enable new types of services. We just heard a great presentation about managing people in multinational organizations. Management of global service operations include huge people management challenges. For example, the case KONE that was mentioned earlier, we have studied that organization longitudinally. It provides us an opportunity to analyze the challenges in global organization. Majority of KONE's revenue comes from service operations. And the case illustrates that new service offerings might be much more complex than the traditional products that the company has been selling for over its 100 years history. But KONE has successfully combined the products into a service solution, and the modules of this solution have been tied together with software interfaces. This has led to a modular production system that allows different groups within the organization to have different identities and schemes of reasoning, such as the traditional market logic in the product line organization and more like a community focusing logic of the service organization. In this vein, the hybridity of offerings is linked with the hybrid organizing. And we study this as a means that managers in the firm use when they try to maintain a balance between different schemes of reasoning within the organization or different logics that represent or that are represented by individuals in the organization. The institutional theory perspective provides us a vantage point to understand how service-centric strategies emerge and become institutionalized within firms in different business ecosystems and industrial fields. Related to the last point in the slide, the example in the picture represents our study with the major steel manufacturing company, SSAB. We study how the information sharing among supply chain partners in the case may lead to closed-loop ecosystems that fosters new services among the participants involved. For example, producing a specific type of steel is a very difficult challenge, and information about who produced it through what combination of materials is an important and valuable asset that can be shared in the supply chain. And the distributor of the steel product can use that information to get better price for the product. And eventually the user might benefit by getting a better insurance for the product if the composition of the material is known and the durability of the material, for example. To illustrate, more than 80% of all copper ever mined in the world is still in circulation today. And the companies in this case study in the ecosystem, they try to do the same with the steel recycling through a closed-loop service ecosystem. We conduct design science research to analyze the outcomes of the activities in their real-life contexts. Finally, I think that critical research about this phenomena is important even in the future. Some areas of research and topics to be mentioned that we are working on are listed here. And I think that in the Aalto University, we have a great opportunity to conduct such research. We have excellent connections with the industry. We have great opportunities to conduct transdisciplinary research, and we have great faculty to work with and to gain high impact outcomes. So here's all for now. Thank you.